good morning, and welcome to this new episode of the WaterTalks Podcast. I'm your host, Els Vanbeckevoort, and I'm happy to be joined by my co-host, Scott Bowron. Hey, good morning, Scott.
Good morning, Els. So good to see you again. We live so far apart, and it's
Yes,
always good
sir.
to see you.
Yes, it is indeed. How's the weather treating you over there in Grand Bend?
It's trying to be winter.
Yes,
Yeah,
almost winter.
well,
There you go.
almost winter.
There
Yes.
you go. There you go. For those of you who haven't yet heard November's podcast, I do want to recommend that you tune in. It was recorded in Vaughan at our annual Better Pools conference.
Yeah, I would say very much to take a listen to the European guests, their perspective, their experience, and understanding the regulatory requirements and how to bring them to our pools
Yeah.
here in North America. Great information.
Yes, it was. Yeah. So maybe,
Um,
yeah, go ahead.
I,
Scott, sorry.
before we get going, I just from that, and it was a while ago now. What were your takeaways? What really hit you in that day?
Well, it was an interesting day all round, I would say. But for me, learning and mastering, I guess, the foundational measurement principles, like of a few key performance indicators. It's surprising what a big difference that can make in helping operators manage a pool. So for me, that was really surprising also to see people kind of go, there's things about this that I didn't yet realize or know. So I thought that was quite interesting. How about you? What were your highlights?
Well, I guess the same idea. We had some pretty seasoned people in the room, and when we did the testing, particularly when we did the afternoon, when the hands-on, when people actually took the test measurement systems that are kind of the norms, and then we tested them against other instrumentation and how accurate you really can be in
Yeah,
setting the course of how your pool's going to run.
indeed. And I think we had a host of great speakers actually. One of which has gracefully agreed to join us today. He was one of the key speakers at the Better Pools conference as well. Darin Kubicki is a supervisor of operations at the town of Oakville, and he spoke about adoption of digital logbooks. And I think his practical insights were well received. And it's great that we have an opportunity to hear a little bit more of his story today.
Hi.
Hey, there you go. Hi, good morning, Darin.
Hello.
Good morning,
Morning.
Darin. How are you?
Good. I'm doing great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks for making some time for us under your very busy schedule, no doubt. For our listeners, Darin has a long history with pools and brings with him a wealth of experience. Maybe Darin, just to introduce yourself just briefly to the audience, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who's Darin Kubicki?
Yeah. So my name's Darin. I'm a supervisor of operations here for the town of Oakville in their facilities services department. So um, got I always wanted to give back to the community. Always wanted to be involved in recreation, and started my way down this path. Getting into leisure services, 2-year diploma course to just understand how recreation works and get a better feel, but also understood that I wanted to be involved with the community and give back and be a part of recreation. And yes, at the end of that, I transitioned and wanted to do a little bit more, and you know, uh, enrolled in fire college. Took my pre-service firefighting course and graduated out of Conestoga. And unfortunately, so did 30,000 other graduates that same year, and became a very competitive field to get
Right.
into. So um, decided to look for work that was definitely down the field that I had a wealth of knowledge in, which was pools. So that's kind of how I got down that path. But yeah, just for myself, I'm just a general family man. Enjoy spending time with my family and my son Riley and my wife Sam, and
Nice.
you know, um, encouraging sports and learning sports that I don't generally play, and like soccer, and starting to learn more about the sport, and trying to encourage him to play more hockey. And but for me, just staying active, staying involved in recreation, playing hockey myself, and staying involved with some rock climbing, and and just staying physically active and involved in recreation in a whole.
Right up your street. Yes,
I
indeed.
I like, Darin, that your history, you started as a lifeguard and now you're in operations because you have more of a holistic understanding. Because sometimes in operations, we don't really feel the other side, really understand what it's like to be on deck for 8 hours and how much impact the operations staff can have on that experience.
Right.
So,
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Maybe that's a good kind of segue into the next question. Perhaps maybe could you tell us a little bit about your job, Darin? Like, what does your day look like as a operational supervisor? Maybe just touch on some of the different responsibilities that you have.
yeah, absolutely. So, to a good point, like Scott was saying, is in operations, you don't see the kinetic impact that we provide to the aquatic staff, and we're not on deck all day. We're not in the water all day. So, our operational side, and specifically to my point as a operations supervisor, is to ensure that my operations staff are well trained. They have a good idea of what is required to maintain a great pool, great air quality, good chemistry. But that's just one focused aspect of if you have an aquatic environment. We also have rinks,
Right.
and a community center in general that we have to maintain with all the mechanical equipment, the air handling system, building environment in general, and
Right.
that includes all the electrical and everything that has to. So anything, a good way that we like to describe what we basically touch or focus on is if you were to take a building and tipped it upside down,
Right.
if everything was to fall out of this building, we don't deal with that.
Yes.
So it's everything that's attached to the building. That's what we're generally required to do. But as a supervisor, it's more or less just making sure that our preventative maintenance is addressed and making sure that we have scheduling and training done on time,
Right.
and which comes to budgets and limiting. And I guess our number one goal is limiting service disruptions or preventing unplanned
Yes.
shutdowns. So
So
that's what our main
if
goal is.
everything goes well, nobody really knows you're there.
that's right.
Essentially, yes, but the unfortunate part is everybody does know I'm here because you're the number one guy to come complain to when there's
Ah,
something wrong. So you need to also be the face of your facility. So
I see.
I do embrace that, and I make everybody understand that I'm very proud of my facility. I'm very proud of the operations staff and all the other full-time and part-time staff that work here. I'm very proud of all the work they
Sure,
do.
it's a big team effort, no doubt. Maybe if you had to choose, one of those activities, like what do you like best about your work? Or is there some things that, are a little bit more challenging?
Yeah, I'd actually take it almost one further. From when I was a lead hand, I miss the hands-on interaction as a lead hand. That was where my favorite is being able to go fix a problem, get told that there's something wrong, and be able to go and fix it. And if you can't fix it, there's a lot of things I can't fix, who to call and what to call. But as a supervisor, it's being able to take that step back approach and delegate people to do that job. And that's a good rewarding feeling, knowing that you're training those
Right.
people to do that position before you and having a good understanding of what is expected from a lead hand or an operator in our facility, and then taking the supervisor role and ensuring that they understand what's required out of them. That's probably one of my favorite features, is being able to train and provide the same level or experience that was given to me,
Yeah.
and being able to provide it to them and then see them thrive and be successful in their role as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You are definitely a people's person, I think, and that's kind of that people appreciate that when you're willing to go the extra mile to help them and support them and try and facilitate for sure. So
Sure.
maybe moving the conversation a little bit to pools again, if we can, like maybe can you share with our listeners what were some of the challenges, or are some of the challenges related to pool operations that you've had to contend with them? Maybe not just currently in your current situation, but maybe in your experience, which has been long in different roles working in and around pools. Can you give us some context on some of the things that you've seen?
Yeah, certainly the number one issue that I see across the board, especially if you have a municipality or a private sector that has multiple centers that they're running, is standardizing procedures across the board and all having, you know, obviously every body of water is going to always be different, but standardizing those procedures or those set points so that each pool is following the same kind of regulations or standards um, is always difficult. Everybody's got a different way to manage their pool or their facility, but grasping those key concepts of having a standard set unit for success is hard to get across to everybody because everybody will say I have a different body of water, and that is fine, but there is a standard that will set you up for success. So trying to get that across 10 different facilities, because the town of Oakville does have 10 pools.
Right.
Getting that across should seem like it's very seamless, but it's not. And it doesn't stop just with pools, but it's with other concepts that we have as well. Standardization across the mass is very hard to do.
Sometimes practice makes permanent, right? Like that's part of the challenge, I think, as well. And Scott, I'm sure in all of your training days, and there's been many, maybe you can speak to that briefly as well.
Well, I think what Darin's saying, we have, if you have 10 pools, you have 10 different philosophies, and in a role like you have, it's so busy, and you're really usually trying to catch up. And I think really what you're talking to, Darin, is getting over top of that and getting not into reactive but proactive, and really setting that success level up by looking forward rather than just getting it done today.
Yeah. Again, it's interesting that you learn how to be a fireman, because a fireman, of course, puts out fires. But I'm sure there's a lot to be said about fire prevention. And I think it's, that's kind of the topic that we're going to be talking about today a little bit in terms of pools. So maybe circling back to, maybe more specifically, what were some of the challenges at your current operation that you were faced with from a pool operational perspective or water quality perspective?
Yeah, it basically starts with, and I know we've had talks before, and I guess if you were to really grab what the major problem that I foresee or am dealing with is, what you don't know is you don't know. And I thought through the wealth of my experience and understanding and knowledge and taking CPO courses that I had the concrete answer for everything, saying, hey, if we got this problem, we solve it by doing this. And if we have this kind of problem, we solve it by doing this. But until you actually understand what your major complaint is, and I use that very, very liberally because it's familiar to the first aider as well, is you always want to know what the major complaint is. If we don't know what the major complaint is, we don't know how to fix it. And the problem that we faced here, or the challenges that we face here, is that all of our education, all of our experience is moving in the right direction, still doesn't outline what the outlier problem is. And we put everything we could into something and still didn't turn up results. So trying to figure out how your procedures work, do they effectively work, trying to manage that, I think is a major problem here. But then trying to get new staff, people who are unfamiliar with aquatics and pools, and getting them to come into here immediately and start picking up the reins and trying to figure it out. You've got also issues that way too. So it can be hit from both sides. You can have a physical problem with your pool or your air or your chemistry. But then you're going to have a lack of training from the operations side that puts you in a standstill until you can get that trained. You can't really make any movement on fixing your pool as well. So you're kind of caught in the crossroads trying to navigate both at the same time.
Yeah, I understand that. And I guess, Scott, root cause analysis is not the easiest thing to come by just by the compliant issues of your, of what it is that you need to comply. That's not necessarily going to help you to understand, right?
Well, I would say you're exactly right, Els. We have a set of rules that we follow under public health that's a compliance, and that gets us there. So the philosophy is that people are safe getting in the pool.
Right.
Then taking that and going, okay, so we're compliant, but are we safe and are we healthy?
Right.
And that's a whole different world, quite frankly. And we want to take our pool world there and help people truly understand what goes on in the top end of the water and the top end of the air, system and keep it clean, and so that every swimmer is a safe swimmer.
Right. Yeah. And I think, having spoken with Darin, like I know that you guys have always been compliant. That's never really been an issue for the town of Oakville, and pretty proactive in lots of ways. But perhaps, Darin, you mentioned a few things like air quality, water quality, some training, and kind of having the, what did you do, I guess, or how did your team try to solve the problems that were reoccurring, and that really you were kind of wrestling with, trying to, although you were compliant, we're still wrestling with those issues.
Yeah, so essentially trying to take all the education and all the experiences we've learned from CPO courses and applying that to um, eliminate a problem that we were dealing with air quality on deck, and certainly wasn't a unfamiliar aspect of here, and ultimately an issue we've been dealing with in numerous occasions, but to a certain point where it was starting to affect some of core member groups that were using the facility multiple times throughout the week, and we just had to get to somewhere. We had to nip it and figure out what we need to do to be proactive instead of being reactive, and basically tried to take all of our training, see if we can eliminate this problem. And a lot of the resources that I brought in to try and fix this situation in the preliminary phase was stuff that I learned from the Better Pools workshops, reducing our pH to a lower level and trying to be consistent and standardizing that, and hopefully backing off from a reduction in chlorine. But the unfortunate part is it doesn't give us an overall understanding of what else is happening in our water. And yes, you could see results and say, yes, look, we've done a good job, but ultimately it wasn't getting to the root cause, and we needed help. And we definitely understood that this was beyond the scope of the work that we could do from just an operations point of view. Unfortunately, we can't see what's deeper into the water that's causing problems for us. And ultimately, the resolutions that came to it was that the air quality is not an HVAC problem. It's not a what's in your air or what's on your deck. It's what's in your water. And we didn't understand that entirely until we met you and the San Eco team, where you guys could provide some insights to help us remove these, or better provide some suggestions and optimizations for our facility, so that our chemistry can fix, our water chemistry could fix our air quality issues.
Yeah. And I hear you. It's kind of one of those, like, you do everything you can to make something better, but really, the key requirement, I guess, is that you start to get some insight that you didn't have before. And I think that's where, often when we work with pool stakeholders, that's where there's a challenge, because you do have data, and you do have measurements that are going on a moment by moment basis, but as Scott said, they're more geared towards compliance rather than really understanding what's going on, right, foundationally within the pool.
And when you get that, you're reaching compliant, and somebody in Darin's role, you're compliant, and then to say, okay, we're gonna take this further, and to get budgetary compliance and understanding is, that's a real education piece.
Yeah.
That, because you have to have both. You have to have buy-in from senior management to provide the funding to really understand it, but the outcome is so financially beneficial. Getting that whole big picture it takes time.
What was it like for you, Darin? I guess once you did get some more insight into the big picture, was that surprising to you?
Yeah, you kind of touch base with us being only able to measure kind of the daily requirement compliance thing. So we have no idea what's in the water and what's behind the scenes that we don't know. So once we get some deep data analysis of what's actually going on and providing those insights of what's happening, absolutely shocked and surprised to see what's going on, understanding that I knew that there was a deeper and bigger problem, but never knew the extent or how how deep it actually went, and also to learn that this can be fixed and remedied. And I guess when you get to that point, when you exhaust all options, and you're trying to explain to your core user groups, like, we're staying compliant, see, we get health inspections, we're getting passing those. Compliant is great. Compliant means you're meeting the regulations. Compliant doesn't necessarily always mean, like, and Scott alluded to, health and safety, or health and safe quality water. It just means we're remaining compliant based, and we could always do more. So yeah, seeing the insights that were provided gave us a positive outlook that we can fix this, we can remedy this, and then we can do better. And when I bring those keywords up in meetings and up to my senior management level, they always want to know more. What more could we do? And I said, we're getting there. We're working on it, and we're going to do a lot more.
Right.
And we can do that with the equipment that we have.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe drilling down on some of those key performance indicators that are not required by regulation. Maybe I can ask you about disinfection byproducts. Is that something that was ever on your radar? And if it was, like, what specifically did you already, were you aware of, or was it something that was brand new to you?
Yeah, evaluating disinfectant byproducts. The word always comes around is what everybody's been taught and learned about is, yeah, we have chloramines in the water, or we have organic material in the water. And yeah, we know that, and we know from bather loads and from the public health regs, making sure everybody's having a shower before entering the water, soap and water, and understanding that that's the method that we provide, that we're going to have some sort of byproduct into the water. But to what levels, how to measure that appropriately, we thought it would just be the regular tests that we do, and you get a result, and that's kind of it. But starting to learn that there's more that goes behind it, and how it affects the system, and what it does to change the quality of your water and the quality, air quality, has been a night and day difference here. Once we started to grasp and get some control over the system,
Right.
We've started to see some massive results and lowering our disinfectant byproducts, but understanding that there's other chemicals that we were adding into the pool that were supposed to be bonuses or aids to help with that,
Right.
that were actually hindering and blocking the ability for us to do better. And we don't know that until the information's provided to us. So starting to understand what we're actually adding into the water, and what its byproduct is and what it actually does, is also a very key and important lesson to learn out of this, is understand what the byproduct is out of these aids, or water quality aids is what I'd like to use them as, because we were using one that was limiting the efforts that we could do.
For sure. And maybe, Scott, if I can just broaden the scope a little bit here in our conversation, when we were together for the Better Pools workshop, we did some practical testing in the afternoon, and we did have some health inspectors there as well. And that was interesting just to get their perspective too. But currently, the regulations do not require that you look at any precursors for disinfection byproducts.
No, it's
your thoughts on that, Scott? Like, is that something that really needs to change?
Well, it would certainly be nice to really dig deeper. I think, and I'll just speak to Ontario, because we're speaking, I think, to the provincial health code here in Ontario currently.
Right.
But be it right or be it wrong in my statement, I think we go to the lowest common denominator, and the philosophy has always been more chlorine is better, and that's exactly the opposite. And really catching hold of that, and what does that mean? And the regs are limited, and I think we all recognize that. And when the 2018 regs came out, that was discussed. Was part of the technical group for the new regs here in Ontario, and that was discussed. And it has to be baby steps, and hopefully the next set of regs are even more. And as much as people don't like more regulation, I think it's the way to create a path of understanding and training.
Yeah, I think, combined chlorine readings are not that complicated in the sense that you can calculate them fairly easily. But I think, Darin, for you, that's been a real important indicator for generally, getting to the bottom of your problems, right?
Yeah, and being able to do it accurately and consistently, and have a verifiable method of doing that testing. Unfortunately, through my history and experience coming up, we were always geared towards test kit, which we start to figure out that, when I see the results that come out of that, I could do a test in my pool today and have zero combined chlorine based on the indicator from doing the test. It's not enough to give us enough information of what's going on, and having a device that will provide more accurate results that allow us to see more descriptive or more detailed data. And that's what we need. We need data. We need hard data so that we can see what's going on, because 0 parts per million, I could wrap it up and say, we're done. We've done our job. We have 0 parts per million. But the testing tools, and that's what I think was really great about the pool workshop, was the Bear Pool Workshop, is the testing methods that we trialed there show you how inaccurate a certain test kit is that we use at almost all pools. Virtually all pools use the same system, but it's not giving you the information. And that finding out what our combined chlorines were was absolutely vital to getting to the source of what was going on, and to be accurate and precise and consistently allowed us to follow trends, using our logbooks.
Maybe just back in. Oh, go ahead, Scott. You wanted to.
I would say to that, Darin, we're seeking the answer, not just, okay, done, let's move on to the next thing because I have other problems. You were really looking to see what's going on here, and I think huge kudos to you, because it's rare, quite honestly. People say I'm compliant and move on.
Yeah, for sure. And
you've done a great job.
Exactly. It does require a certain inquisitiveness, I guess, and an openness to learning and wanting to understand, what's possible. Maybe just give us a little bit of insight into, what were some of those, once you got to understand, okay, here's what actually the true status is of our water quality, let's say, having visibility on, not just your compliant, measurements, but actually maybe even those compliant measurements, you learned some new things, right? So what were some of those things that really were eye-opening to you?
Yeah, that pH is all of it. It's it really harnesses the ability to be successful. And 7.2 to 7.8 and being 7.5 right down the middle is not necessarily the safest or the best for you. Yes, it allows you to remain compliant, but we understood from a standpoint that being directly down the middle for all your chemical additions, your sodium, your total alkalinity, being straight down the middle is not necessarily how your pool is to respond. And we learned a very valuable lesson that lowering our pH to 7.3 and being consistent has had a wealth of benefits to the facility, the pool water and chemistry right from day one. And getting to that point was difficult, and certainly a learning lesson, but also to the pH as well as the methods that we test as well. And getting over the stigma of, well, why is this and this test this, and why is this test that? That was also a big eye opener of learning how to do appropriate testing to remain consistent, and then calibrating our systems to ensure that we're remaining valid based on those tests that we're providing. And that's a new lesson that we learned as well. We didn't know how often to calibrate. We didn't know how to test that we were off. We thought the controller said one thing and our manual test said the other, and we kind of just thought if it was close, we're doing well. But learning that we set our controllers and our testing systems to a standard allowed us to validate the information that we're seeing, and ensuring that we're staying very consistent and precise with our measurements allowed us to start harnessing in our chemistry. And we started to reduce as well, and understanding where our levels of chlorine were also outrageously high. And like Scott said earlier, more chlorine is better is not so much the case. And understanding that you could have a lower free chlorine that's very effective as long as your pH is maintained and consistent.
Exactly. Yeah, and like I say, at the beginning, as Scott and I were talking about the conference, those two key things that you've said there, like if they were implemented in most pools, like they would just have such an improved outcome. The problem is that we don't necessarily understand that having an estimate on levels is maybe okay in our backyard pool, where although I would still say no, but anyways. But when we're really trying to look at what the impact is, the true cost of what it is that we're doing, it's a challenge because we need to understand that these two parameters have a significant impact on what happens with everything else, and that's where unless you're measuring, as you said at the beginning, Darin, to measure, you don't know what you don't know unless you're measuring for it. You really wouldn't know. And so that's part of the educational piece, that Scott is trying to address and his trainings, and that we're trying to, connect with people on and show them in practical ways that, this actually makes a big difference. And maybe, my next question, I guess, would be, how would you evaluate your approach today? Obviously the town of Oakville has been progressive in all of this. They've also given you the opportunity to really find the answers and to look for ways in which you can standardize and improve. And what would you say practically? How has that changed your outcome? How has it changed your results? What's happening these days?
Yeah, so with setting new standards for how we're responding to chemistry in our water, essentially making that new gold standard that we've set and then ironed it out, trained our staff and got that going. That's the new standard that we're holding at this facility. So any new staff come in have to follow these procedures. And it's not so much this is the reason why. We've explained to them the reasons behind it, and we get buy-in from the operational team so that they understand what they're doing as well. But the benefits that we're getting out of this, setting that standard as where we have in partnership with San Ecotech, is that we're starting to notice that we're adding less chemicals. We're saving on our costs for our budgets for our chemical usage have significantly improved because we're not adding and reducing for waste and countering with a different chemical. We're noticing that we're streamlining across with a better pH. We're not having to make top-ups here and there. So the overall advantage out of it is that we're making, optimizing and making cost savings efficiencies across the board. And also noticing that we're making different adaptations to our facility, where we're adding a clarifier or a flocculant has allowed us to then get more out of our filtration system, which we believe is optimal for the site, but we're trying to squeeze every little inch out of it now. And understanding that is allowing us to have a more effective backwash, which will help reduce our waste and consumption of water. And those are different things that you don't see necessarily when you're in the whole operation scheme of, how a pool runs. There's a lot of water replenishment that needs to be done. And if we can reduce that, we remove a little bit of our carbon footprint to, and that's a big goal for the town, is being very efficient with what we're doing. So this already has started to show some payback already, just based on small little tweaks that we've done, and then just remaining compliant, or not compliant always, but consistent. Consistent, right?
Yeah, exactly. And maybe so talk a little bit about the digital tools that was the topic of your talk at the Better Pools conference, but how the digital tools also help you to really know where you're at.
Yeah, well, I think this is where a big key aspect is getting over the stigma of has to be a paper logbook, and the health department's not, or your health inspectors want to see the paper. Well, you're going to have them anyways, but you're going to have some sort of history to provide to them, whether it's a digital logbook or if it's a paper logbook that you have. As long as you got some form of history that you can provide some background for them to view, is not going to be an issue. So it's just making sure that you interact with your health inspector and make sure that you have a good relationship with them. But since we've adopted a digital logbook, it's allowed us and myself, the operations team, to view trends on real time, allow us to see on a single page multiple readings instead of it just being flip the page and day by day and you have to kind of spot the problems. The digital logbook has allowed us to view those trends much quicker, allow us to spot errors faster so that we can make adjustments quicker if that needs to be, so that we can be more effective or efficient with our daily pool operations. So it's been great, but also that data in a digital logbook allows us to look at KPIs that we feel that are important to understand, successes, small wins that we're getting along the way, or areas that need improvement. And unfortunately, in a paper logbook, it would take you hours and hours and hours for you to compile data just to come up with a couple of wins that you may or may not see because you don't know what you're looking for. But
Yeah.
on a digital logbook, it provides those insights straightforward, and it's right there, and it's easy to read and easy to use.
Yeah.
Darin, if I just going to add to that, before 2018, actually digital copy wasn't allowed under public health, and it is now. So for some people, they don't quite recognize that yet. The other is from a risk perspective. It is so valuable, and we live in a very litigious society now. So for the town of Oakville, on a daily perspective and on an annual perspective, if you want to take that, but then on a long-term risk management, that's accurate. That's you have on a permanent basis for the town to hang on to. So just so valuable going to a digital system. And with so many places I go into, the daily logbook is this, and it's on a clipboard still. And those days are done, right? So you're
Well,
big
just to
value.
just to add to that as well is that, you know, my office was a nook here in the facility. We had a heat pump flood above, and it flooded my office space where all the logbooks were stored in an archiving box and gone. So digital allows us to have that backup in case of emergencies. You know, be able to provide data on the fly. If someone's looking for something specific, we can go back and look at that easily without having to, you know, call up books that I've already sent off to be archived or whatnot, or items that I've had stored on site. Yeah, risk preventative or risk management, sure, but you know, retention of data and safety of it is also important, because if I lose those, yeah, we're in big trouble.
For sure. And maybe, you know, Darin, from you know, a prescriptive analytical perspective, you mentioned earlier, you know, we now operate to a higher standard. And I think from you know, from that perspective too, right, this is helpful for you to benchmark yourselves against that higher standard. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit. How has it helped you to, you know, to visually follow and see and track, and to, you know, to say, okay, we're definitely compliant, but you know, we're now operating at a very different level.
Yeah, with the new standard that we see in place, it allows us to evaluate how we're and critique the way that we're managing the pool. And you can have all the, you know, the premium platinum toys and tools set up for your facility, but if you're still not running a high level standard for your facility, you're still going to run into some problems. So us keeping and raising the bar here more and more, and as we continue moving along, we'll still raise that bar even higher. It allows us to run this facility at a high, efficient but effective way of managing this facility, even if we have some subcomponents that are marginally successful, as that, you know, can hinder some of the success we're having. So raising the bar allows us to eliminate and move any of those objects out of the way. We can still accomplish our goal without having to rely on other sources, but having that bar set that high allows us to critique, you know, kind of the work that we're doing in the facility and how we're managing the pool. It allows me to train and better optimize, you know, our system, but allow me to train the staff better. We're certainly getting more staff that want to come and visit and get involved with aquatics now than we ever have. And it's interesting to see that, because it's always a shift. There's a lot of guys that want to deal with ice. A lot of people want to get involved with pools now. As we continue to further build more pools in the town of Oakville, we're going to have to set a new, you know, and I like to say gold standard. We've now got to set a premium platinum standard that we're going to run our pools at. And this is how we run them from day one moving forward. And the evidence that supports here will be able to translate across to all the pools
Right.
start moving in that direction so that we don't miss the bar and that we're always trying to be, strive for excellence at all times.
And would you say then, for those operators that are thinking, wow, it's tough enough to be compliant, like why would we, consider working to a higher standard? Like you've already, mentioned the fact that there's cost savings, there's potential sustainability aspects and greenhouse gas reductions and other all kinds of other implications that that people are maybe not necessarily aware of when you're running a suboptimal system. But maybe do you have a few words of encouragement to how can maybe smaller facilities or facilities that maybe don't have all of the tools and everything, how they can make a difference as well? Like, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's basically I've explained it to my operations staff here is you need to get your op staff or your whoever's maintaining your pool or facilities, you have to get them to buy in and have some ownership. And it's basically just how I started off in my aquatics career is be proud of the work that you do. And when you've accomplished something like a crystal clear pool that with low chloramine results, balanced pH. Those are results of the efforts you put in throughout the day. Now, yes, it's a controller that's probably doing most of the work, but you have to steer it and make sure that it's in the right direction. And if you can maintain through your shifts a great chemistry, great air quality, no service disruptions, it gives you some payback, and you should feel proud about the work that you're completing. So if I had any advice is if you're having troubles or you're having issues, is to seek some help and look and try and grasp what's beyond, even if you've exhausted all options that you have and you've done everything. There is additional help and there is support along the way. And just a comment from myself is that when we originally did get the insights back, it was very humbling for me to be like, I thought I knew this pool well. This was my baby. I've taken care of this for a long time, but I didn't know it as well as I thought I did. So very humbling for me to understand that there's work to do. But if you're willing to put the effort in, you will see and reap the benefits. And it's certainly not unmeasurable, and it's manageable along the way.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. And I think, if I think about the actual results, you guys are running that pool now at, trichloramine levels that are better than the best standard that we have in this country, which is in BC. So, that's very encouraging, right? So that's very, very different from all of the other pools that we've ever looked at from a research perspective and identified that this is a serious issue. And of course there are lots of technologies that can help mask or that can help like more energy into your HVAC system or other ways in which you can try and address those problems. But if you don't, like Scott said, don't get to the root cause, then really you're being at best inefficient, but actually worse, you're being very wasteful.
Yes.
And you're causing a lot of potential pollution and other things that are not necessary. And I think that hopefully that vision will start to take root in that way as well, that people can see, well, okay, we can do this in a better way. We can actually prevent a lot of waste and have the better outcomes that we're looking for. Maybe as a final question perhaps on your processes, like if you were going to give some concrete steps, and you already mentioned it in your last little bit of conversation here, but if you gave some concrete steps, what would you tell other operators or other pool managers to say, okay, if you want to take a proactive approach, like what should they do?
Yeah, so for us is trying to get around the we know everything kind of approach. Like we say it all the time, you don't know what you don't know, and understanding that there's probably somebody who knows more and knows how to get to those root causes better. So my probably number one concrete is to seek help if you can't provide a resolution or a solution on your own with all your experiences and all your knowledge and trying and exhausting all your options. Seek help, and certainly we've done that with reaching out to San Ecotech. That was our seek for help. We definitely needed assistance on understanding what was kind of happening, and unfortunately, we just don't have those capabilities to understand the same, depth of analysis of water as San Ecotech does. So I would always say seek help to gather that. But also, one thing we also had to acknowledge as well, and you have to, is have an open communications line with your user groups, specifically your core groups that are using the pool
Right.
consistently. They're the ones who are going to give you valuable, input for what's going on, and that can be your aquatics program or aquatics department that's using the facility every day. So your lifeguards and swim instructors, but also your user groups that are using it. So public swims, but also your swim clubs and whatnot. We're here to provide a safe and efficient facility for everybody, for the community. So if we're not getting some buy-in or some open communications with them with what's going on, you're not going to know what's really going on with your pool, because like we said, you can go to the back and the logbook says you're compliant. Well, we're done here. It's not necessarily the case, and we have to take every suggestion we get and analyze it and make sure that there is some validity to it and make sure that we're doing something about it. But and then my third one is when you do get that info back, or when you do receive some feedback, is start to set a new standard and build your procedures for it, and use that as your moving forward training tool. And
Right.
don't let the mark slip. It's a lot of effort. It takes time, but once you ingrain that into the system, you start to push away that stigma of pools have to be like this, pools have to be like that. They don't necessarily have to be like that. We can gear them to be efficient. We can optimize our systems. We can be better than where we are, and understanding that it's a set and forget kind of system. It's not. It's a very volatile system that likes to change on the dime. And if we can understand that better and set standards that will set you up for success, you will see the benefits through the process.
Yeah.
Darin, this is obviously a very structured idea. We're going to change. Did you have conversations with your user groups? And I know you would obviously have at least one swim team in the facility. They're a big, and for those, they're big bather load, right? Coming from swim teams.
Correct.
The benefit of a swim team is it's a great sport. The challenge for you as an operator is the huge bather load that's produced. So did you actually talk to them and say this is where we're heading?
Yeah, so we had many conversations with the club to understand, the problems that we were having, and kind of had to give them a plan for what we were doing to kind of fix it. Now, yes, you can certainly get some obscured results and input that, you're going to have to do some deep research and understand whether this is actually factual or not. And obviously everybody's going to have something to say, but certainly some of the results that we were receiving were factual and we needed to nip and get on top of. But we've had open dialogue with the club and giving them open, communication about what we're trying to do, where we've gone, how we're going to fix the problem. And then we need some feedback and buy-in from them to see if the results that from our efforts, if it's effective or not. So we've definitely kept the communications open, and we've hosted 2 swim meets now so far, and have had positive feedback saying that the air quality on deck has been a massive change since previous years, running the same amount of swimmers and same kind of bather loads. But one of our key takes with the swim club as well was mentioning that they're also involved in this process, and it's not just a one lane or one way street. Is that they produce byproducts into the water, and that we have to work together as a team to ensure that if they want the quality of water that they want to swim in, they need to have some buy-in as well, which is making sure that they're washing before entering the pool, and making sure that they follow the Ontario pool regs as well, just as much as they're expecting us to provide some safe quality water for them.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a pretty holistic approach. I love it.
Yeah, for sure. I think so too. I think having open communication channels is always better. And I don't know, I think, Scott, it was in our first podcast we talked about transparency and openness, right? How that really instills trust into the community and all of the stakeholders. And I think that's a really good approach to take. So well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
I think for them to understand, and in the world we live in, and people understanding that people don't even realize yet that their public health inspections are online. You can read a public health
Mhm.
inspection from any facility. I can go in and see Oakville's public health records right now. That people don't realize that. And then I know, as I mentioned it to you, there was an incident down in the U.S., and as a
Right.
result of that, the transparency required. A young boy died um, from a microbiological issue, and the result of that to the community was that the outcome was transparency. So we have to that. I think you'll see that flow through our entire pool world over the next couple of years, and so being forward with that and saying you're part of this, it's a little different perspective there, but
Right. No,
it's
I
all kind of ends up being the same.
exactly, exactly. Scott, maybe we have time just for one or two more questions. I know that we have some submitted to us for Q&A, but I don't know whether we have. I think we have a
Yeah,
few minutes, if that's all right.
I would. So, Darin, we have to comply for fouling protocols. Has anything changed in how you affect fouling protocols? So, for those of your viewers, when people poop in the pool, we have to respond to that as operations staff. It's part of the gig, and have an understanding of that. So, has that changed for you folks at all?
Um, it hasn't so much changed, but what we've done is just prepared, made ourselves better prepared for when the situation happens. We always have this superstitious thing that when we start talking about it's going to happen. So I'm
Oh,
knocking
sorry.
on everything here today.
Okay.
But that being said, it's no longer one of those superstitious things because either way, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But it's worse when you have it happen and you're not prepared for it. So what we've done is here at our facility, because we are the largest pool in Oakville, we're an 8-lane, 25-meter competition style facility. We have a lot of water, and we have to dose it quickly. And time is of the essence, because if it's generally when it happens is during program swimming lessons, and we have a minimum time that we need to ensure that we're sanitizing the water, and we have to get programming back up and running. So it's very important for us to ensure that we do this as efficient and effective as possible. And so what we've just done here is we've set out standards. So if you're sitting at a chlorine rate of, whatever, we've done a chart that has dosed out the amount that we would need to set ourselves for success above and beyond the part per million for sanitation that we need to be. And we've done it for different varies free chlorine readings. So once we take that initial chlorine reading, after the fouling has been done, we have a guide that allows us to be efficient with dosing that pool. And once it's in the water, we just measure multiple times, keeping that on the quarterly, making sure that we maintain our standard, and then get the timer going and hopefully get our pool open up and running as fast as possible. It's not so much has things really changed, it just allows us to be better prepared for a
Right.
situation.
Proactive is
Correct.
always the way, yeah. And then just kind of going back a notch, and kind of a question that was asked is uh, how difficult, and I think you kind of did speak to it, but we'll just review it again, to go from a paper copy to digital logbooks. Was it a big transition for you and for the staff to understand, or
Not
pretty?
so much, any difficult for them to change. You're still inputting the same numbers. We're still doing the same test requirements. We're doing our pH, our alkalinity, our chlorine. We're still filling out the same ORP. We're still filling out that same information. My I guess a difficulty or a pain point with going digital is intergenerational operators. You have some older operators who have been around for a while, don't use tech that much. Yes, we're all tech facilities now, and tech is starting to evolve, but just trying to break that mold of them filling out a paper logbook for 15, 20, 30 years, now having them go on to a digital logbook and kind of do that where, their general aspect of using a computer is, looking at the building automation system, checking an email. That's probably the extent of what they're doing. So having them do one more thing like a digital logbook, yeah, that would be a pain point, but certainly something you can navigate through, spend some time working with them. I built a documentation kind of training on how to navigate the system, the digital logbook better, and certainly how they can use the logbook as a tool to measure whether they're being successful or not. And as difficult it may have seemed at the beginning, I now have some of my senior guys here being the mentors and champions of the digital logbook and training newer staff that are coming on board on how to use the software. So something that I thought may have been a pain point has now become a successful outcome, and they're now championing it and showing me KPIs and saying, "Hey, look how well we were doing here during the swim meet," and they're showing me that before I even get a chance to go and look at it. So, which I guess is nice to see, but certainly that would be my major pain point or difficult getting it moving forward. But as far as doing it, this is the new procedure and we're pushing it forwards. And that's kind of how you have to get it going. But certainly if you don't have the support to do it, it's going to be much tougher for you.
Right. Is it helpful, as well, Darin, that, that operators can actually see the results of their measurements as they're putting them in, that it actually tells them whether they're on track or they're doing well? I think those are all helpful, I guess. You've mentioned this to me before.
Yeah, it gives and that's real time kind of success,
right.
Quick wins. So every time they go back and do a measurement or a pool test, which for us is every 2 hours, they get to see where that trend is going, and it shows them in a positive trend, and it kind of gives them insight. So it also then helps them prepare when they start to see the numbers change. Hey, okay, I've got to be a little bit more aware. What do I have actually in the pool right now, and what do I got to do to be to prepare for another load? What's coming in next? So it allows them actually. What it's done is actually push them to be a little bit more proactive on anticipating another load coming into the facility. So if we just had a swim team in, and we're getting hammered, in our chemistry, and they notice we have a big, recreational swim coming up, it allows them to see that and see that change in real time, and then be proactive for the next swim. Hard for me to pull that data out of a logbook. I certainly could do it, but I'm looking line per line and saying, hey, where's my changes here? The logbook gives you successes along the way and shows you how well you're actually doing.
Yeah, no, that's really good.
That's awesome. I'd say to me, sort of getting to the wrap up here, it's really helpful to hear real world application.
Yeah,
you're a guy with boots on the ground, working every day, understand the practical points of managing a pool, and we're coming to the end, I think, of our water talk this week. An hour goes by so quickly.
Yes.
We'll call it the Water Talks Power Hour. Darin, thank you so much for participating today, giving your insights and your understanding, and we very much appreciate it. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Darin. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you for the opportunity.
We'll see you again.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Take care.